signal broke up. Hello and welcome back to VAR and Espresso. This is episode 17. And this is where we all admit that we know absolutely nothing about football because two results yesterday that nobody predicted across any platform in any media. What a day of shocks. Leo, does this sort of thing make the competition more exciting, or does it make it slightly less, considering how unbalanced the top half of the draw and the bottom half of the draw are? Do you think it's a negative thing?
No, I think it's a good thing because we pointed out that the competition could become a kind of Champions League from the quarterfinals. And now it would be a real Club World Cup with a lot of foreign teams, foreign outside of Europe. So it would be quite interesting to see Fluminense, Al Hilal, maybe Monterrey tonight. Who knows? Flamengo also, I think. Oh, wait.
No, Flamengo have already lost.
Yeah, sorry. Palmeiras.
Yes, against Chelsea.
Yeah, Chelsea, Palmeiras, Al Hilal, Fluminense. It will be quite interesting.
Terrific. Patrick, obviously the Al Hilal Manchester City result seems to be the biggest shock of the tournament. But there have been a few, I think, again, all predictions. Why do you think there have been so many shocks at such an early stage of the tournament?
It's hard to judge. I think maybe for the European teams, they might be sort of doing a test for, it's almost like using it as pre-season training in a way. That they mightn't be obviously doing a lot of substitutions, a lot of swap overs. So I don't know if any team really wants to put, in Europe anyway, wants to put 100% effort in going full throttle at the tournament, especially given the heat as well, which could be a separate factor. But it could be that. Despite that, I did not see last night's result coming. I didn't like. Yeah, I was like toying with the idea of sitting up, but then I was like, no, City will be like 2 up in 10 minutes and it'll be absolutely pointless. But yeah, I would imagine a lot of teams are sort of trying to keep their players generally fit, but not overusing them and causing issues, which we saw last night, maybe with Rodri as well, who picked up a little injury, and hopefully it's not too serious because that would be horrendous for him personally. I would say
it'd be cruel as well, considering how long he's been out for.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that the heat's probably a factor, and I don't know, maybe sometimes, like for example, the Inter match was played in front of 20,000 people in a 70,000 odd stadium, so maybe they find it hard to sort of G themselves up with a sort of not much support for Inter with a big team in that match. So that could potentially be an issue as well.
And before we go into talking about the Manchester City Al Hilal game in depth, I think one thing I would like to ask Leo is Simone Inzaghi justified in his move? Because obviously now Al Hilal have gotten further than Inter.
Yeah. Now he will make Al Hilal become the best team in the world, of course. No,
we should point out obviously he went for sporting reasons, no other reasons. Inzaghi moved.
Yeah. Sorry. No. It's a good thing for him to bounce back after what he lived in the last few months with, as we recalled. The loss of the Coppa Italia, the Champions League, and the Serie A. But yeah, it was a great performance from Al Hilal. No one had predicted it, to be honest. Even Al Hilal's players, I think. And it's good because it's the first Asian victory of a UEFA club in history. So
yeah.
It's kind of a historic moment.
So yes, going into the game, there's a reason why I bring up Inzaghi, which I'll pop back to in just a moment. The first half ended 1-0 to Manchester City. And at that point, I don't think anybody could see Al Hilal getting back into it, because it was entirely Manchester City in the first half. They led in the 10th minute, although slightly controversial goal. There was confusion about who there was suspected handball, and it was confusion about who that was from. Was it 𝐊𝐤𝐜𝐤 or although it turned out to be 𝐊𝐢𝐜𝐤 at the left back, so whoever put the cross in appeared the ball here to hit his arm, but it wasn't cancelled, which is strange. Patrick, do you think, if you saw it, did you think that was a handball? Do you understand why the goal was given?
Yeah, I can understand why it was given. I think the Club World Cup have a different rule where it's if the ball is touching part of the shirt, it's sort of like technically not a handball. His arm was down in a natural position. He wasn't flailing out to reach for it or anything. So I think in the Premier League there would have been a VAR check, and I think it may have been a bit like it may have been given. It would have been more chance of it being given. I felt it was a bit of a strange 4-minute protest afterwards, like refusing to kick off. I was pretty pointless, but then might have knocked Man City out of the rhythm as well. So maybe they were thinking of that in the background. But yeah, I can see why the Al Hilal were frustrated, but these things tend not to get overturned.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but this kind of brings up, because one of the new initiatives that FIFA wants to introduce are showing the replays of what's going on with VAR on the big screens. And in this context, obviously, because there was a quick VAR check, and then the entire stadium saw
everybody was
the ball hitting. So therefore, it's like, so everyone's incredulous, right? Like, it's clearly handball without actually knowing the rule that's being interpreted. But then, of course, it's very confusing, isn't it? If it's one rule for one competition and another for other competitions. Leo, your thoughts? Did you think it should have been a handball?
To me, it was. I think the same as Patrick. It's not a scandal. I could have understand if the referee had cancelled the goal, but it's not. As you said, the rules are quite blurry concerning handball. It's a lot of subjective point of view, and it proved to be yesterday again. So. No, it's not a scandal. I can recall it.
Fair enough. And also, we should point out that 𝐊𝐤𝐜𝐤's his arm was down by his side. It was a natural position. It just happened to hit sort of around his elbow area.
Yeah.
But yes, at half-time, 1-0 to Manchester City. Al Hilal's goalkeeper Bono had made 6 saves by that point, although nothing spectacular, but obviously still consistent. And yet, second half, this is why I was bringing up Inzaghi right at the start. Inzaghi must have done something like a tactical switch or a change of tempo or whatever it was, because Al Hilal came out for the second half a completely different side. Patrick, do you see a particular tactical shift, or do you think it was just intensity?
Yeah, I think it was intensity. I think maybe they were preserving, like, they did well. Obviously, they were incredibly lucky to get in at 1-0. I think maybe nobody would have complained if it was 3-0 to City at halftime. But heroics from the goalkeeper. They came out with a lot of early intensity, and I think that stunned City. City might have been sitting there wondering what went wrong in the first half, that they weren't sort of coasting away from this. But City were playing this high line, which is always susceptible to being countered on. Not really an excuse for the first goal, as there wasn't really a chance to develop any line, really. But I think that was just really like fast play, really quick thinking, get up the pitch, confuse the team. Leonardo was immense. He was properly a nuisance yesterday. There was some fantastic team performance, but some solo performances that were amazing. Cancelo as well. But I think that for the first couple of goals and maybe through the second half, Ederson was really showing some poor judgment in keeping. He doesn't seem to be able to clear a ball anymore, like with any sort of power or force. It seems to just parry straight into like into the penalty area. Still does get it out properly, which adds extra pressure on the team. But I think Al Hilal really did step it up. They said, we can't keep on going like this or we will lose 4-0. So I think they did set themselves up for the second half to look at that Man City high line, pick their moments. They were blessed in the first minute, and I think that shook City. Even though City got back into it, they weren't the same as they were in the first half. They were left open maybe they were thinking, oh, we'll just win this. Maybe there was a bit of ego going for it. We don't have to put in a massive shift. But no, Al Hilal, fair play to them. They really, they showed up in the second half and showed up in extra time as well.
Well, to give you to back you up on certain points with Edison. So saves in the match. Bono had 10 saves by the end of extra time, and Edison had 2, and one of which ended up in a goal anyway, although slightly unlucky with that one. Yes. Considering I'm going to go to Leo, do you think Inzaghi deserves the credit for how the players came out and performed in the second half? Because again, the difference between the first half and the second half was astonishing.
This was quite surprising to see how Al Hilal played in the first half and then in the second half, because if they were just led 1-0 at the halftime, it was because of a great Bono. I'm thinking of that save on Savinho with the hand, and he was on the ground and he put his arm, and it was extremely decisive, to be honest. I think he made 6 saves in just the first half. Manchester City had largely dominated this period, creating a lot of occasions. They scored the goal. They could have scored more, but I think when they came back from the restrooms, Al Hilal were. It was kind of Patrick talked about ego. I think it can be possible. They put some intensity that they didn't have until the 46th minute. They scored really quickly. Then they scored the second 6 minutes later. It was, I think, Manchester City was surprised by what Al Hilal proposed to them in the second part. And what really struck me in that match, it's not the quality of the goals, because if you watch goal by goal, it was kind of strange goals. It was set pieces in the box after a lot of rebounds and everything, but there are qualities, assists. I can think about the one of Cancelo to Malcolm on the second goal, and the one of Cherki to Foden on the equalizer.
What a goal that was! My goodness,
it's incredible. The pass, the Cherki assist made me think every proportion, of course, but of Messi's. When he does that kind of chip with the ball in the box, and it was exceptional.
Well, let's. So we've talked about the first goal. The terminology I think you're looking for, Leo, was second balls. A lot of second balls. So
second ball.
So goals coming from a saved shot or a blocked shot and reacting quicker. Yeah. So after half time, Marcus Leonardo scoring after a Malcolm shot was blocked into his path, and then, as you said, 6 minutes later, a Manchester City corner, and João Cancelo obviously haunting his old club, with a fantastic outside of the foot long through ball, which Malcolm, obviously being in his own half, he then had the entire Manchester City half to run into. But we spoke about this yesterday, didn't we? I mean, we did say that Manchester City were going to win, but we also highlighted that even when they won against Juventus so convincingly, they do have these defensive fragilities. Patrick, what did you see anything particular, defensively, what the issue was exactly, or do you think it felt a bit chaotic? It felt like they'd lost their heads in those opening 10 minutes of the second half.
No, absolutely. And I think obviously with the new players trying to gel in, trying to obviously maintain a decent level of fitness, but not go too far the other way and sort of get injuries, wreck themselves for the start of the Premier League season or even pre-season. I think they can transition from defense to attack beautifully. The flip side of it, going back into defense from an attacking position when they lose the ball, they are very, very pedestrian. They were not showing the same level of intensity as I would have expected from them. Maybe there is a sort of gelling issue with the new players, who goes where. But yeah, no, I definitely saw them get caught out a lot. That second goal to have that much space is an absolute sin, really. I'm sure Al Hilal weren't complaining, but yeah, it was so odd to see that. It reminded me of I think there was a match a few years ago around COVID time when Aston Villa beat Liverpool. I'm not sure the score. I think it might have been
7-2,
7-2, and like
7-1.
I think five of their goals were really similar to that, where like Liverpool were having an attacking corner. So one of the Villa players cleared it, and there was like a complete like 60, 70 yards clear for somebody to run in and score. But yeah, it just seemed really lax from transition from attack back into defense again. There was a real lack of communication. I think as they got flustered, they didn't communicate. They probably kept on trying to sort of put out fires themselves, and Al Hilal remained composed to that period. And even as the match bore on, I think City were probably expecting the Al Hilal intensity to drop. It just didn't. They were sort of matching them punch for punch.
Yeah, we'll actually get more specific details of that a bit later. But you mentioned about the sort of the defensive seeming a bit lethargic, or not. Again, not that intensity in retreating. And clearly Guardiola thought the same, because only a couple of minutes after that second goal, he made a triple substitution with Gundogan, Matheus Nunes and Vardiol all being substituted off, and Rodri, Ake and Akanji all coming on. So clearly Guardiola trying to fix a problem he clearly seen. And it must have worked, because obviously only a minute after the substitutions, a Manchester City corner from Bernardo Silva, and like you said before, Leo, sort of like this second ball situation where the ball sort of comes off something, but Haaland reacts quickest, which is part of the reason why he's one of the best goal scorers in the world, right? His instinct is bettered by nobody, really.
He's just cold-blooded. He saw the ball and just want to put it in the back of the net. But even if Al Hilal's performance is incredible, we can also say that Manchester City did a good game. They played well, and Guardiola said it after the game. It was not. It was chaotic, but it was not horrible. I think there are defensive issues, Manchester City, and they will work on it this summer, or during the time they have this summer, because it's already summer. And yeah, it will be good for them to have a break after this season, which was long and difficult for them on a club's aspect, with no title, no victories, no victory in the Premier League. No, it will be cool for them. And they have new players also. Ryan Aït-Nouri, yesterday, he showed one more time that what he can bring to that team on the left side is really fast, really quick. Sorry, he's really. How can I say that? I don't have the word, but yeah, he's attack minded. He's quite like a machine. He made me think of a little bit of Achraf Hakimi, if you see what I want to say, on the physical aspect.
And technical as well. He has incredible technical ability. But I suppose the thing is, we've always known of his attacking qualities whilst he's been at Wolverhampton Wanderers, but he's always shown defensive frailties. So it does seem quite strange that Manchester City last season in the Premier League, we saw their defensive frailties completely exposed after Rodri was injured. And clearly, like, the way they play may only work with a world-class holding midfielder. But of course, they've sort of, in attempting to sort of fix this fragile defence, they've added a natural left back, which they've not had in a while, but it's a very attacking one. So it seems it's almost like two separate ideas. It seems a bit contradictory. Any thoughts on that, Patrick, on Aït-Nouri as left back?
No, as you say, technically he's very good. He is strong on the ball. I didn't, right? That was a surprise to me to see that Man City were showing interest in him. Guardiola may be a project for him to maybe like he has done previously with players, to take him in a position, maybe flesh him out to make him more of a utility player, to be able to like cover a few positions. I thought he's adapted well to the team during the group stages. He looked very confident against Juventus. He was fantastic. Even like last night, he didn't have a bad game. As Leo said, Man City played very well, but again, defensively, Man City just seemed to be a little bit confused. Now, I wonder, because Pep used to project onto his teams his own sort of persona. So if he was calm, relaxed, the team would be free flowing. I wonder if the players are sort of looking whenever something goes wrong, and maybe Pep, given the fact he does overthink things, or he has been known to overthink things tactically at big times, maybe he isn't giving off that same "no one can beat me" persona, and maybe that feeds into the players. It could be a hangover from last season, but yeah, it's something to address. I can't imagine, like, if Aït-Nouri works well and fixes his defensive, like strengthens up in defense, he could be brilliant. But at the minute, it just seems square peg round hole.
Well, yeah, I suppose the reason I bring it up is because in this day and age, what usually happens is if you have an attacking fullback on one side, you then have a defensive fullback who just tucks in as a third centre back, right? Whichever side that may be. But they tend to have whoever's on the right tends to sort of pop into midfield now. So it's almost like they're playing with a back two. Hence why they keep getting caught on the break, I imagine, because they've only got a couple of players covering a big space. Let's finish up the 90 minutes. So it finished 2-2 at full time, although we should point out at the 84th minute, and Kanji's header from a corner came off the woodwork, and Haaland's shot then was cleared off the line. Again, huge moment in which Al Hilal stood up. Even if once the keeper was finally beaten, someone else was there. But yes, at the end of the 90 minutes, I also checked, at the end of the 90 minutes, Bono had made 8 saves and Ederson had not made a single one. And then we got into extra time. Now, what was quite interesting, first of all, the goal. It was quite a simple goal to concede, wasn't it? Extra time. 4 minutes after the restart, Ruben Neves corner and Koulibaly unmarked 6 yards out, easy goal. I mean, it wasn't great defending either, was it, Leo?
No, I don't think it was, but it was the main word on all the game during all the game. In fact, as we said, their defensive performance were terribly poor, in my opinion. They conceded goals they shouldn't have. Maybe they were less concentrated than. And I think they were less concentrated than if it had been a Champions League or a big Premier League game. And it's natural, but it's kind of deceiving for them because they could have go through to the final in their part of the bracket, and it's a missed opportunity now.
So yes, so we mentioned earlier, Patrick, about how in the 101st minute, Rodri actually had to be substituted back off, despite only coming on in the 55th minute, and a small injury, you said, to Rodri.
Yeah, I don't know if Pep's sort of expanded on it yet, but he just said it's a little setback or a minor setback to his recovery. So not much has been said of it before we came on, but I mean, even with Rodri on, the team had lost all shape. Yeah. So maybe the problem's run deeper.
Also, in returning from injury in that kind of heat, obviously you have to be more carefully. And yet, obviously, this kind of match where it's such intensity of life and chaos. Yeah, I suppose Matt just had to push himself too soon. But Phil Foden came on, and then a minute before half-time and extra time, possibly the goal of the tournament. Ryan 𝐊𝐢𝐜𝐤 with a gorgeous pass from about 25 to 30 yards out from left-footed curling. But the finish from Phil Foden, watching the ball over his shoulder, volleying from an incredibly tight angle. I mean, that was an incredible finish, wasn't it, Leo?
Yeah, while a defender touched him with his foot, and he was not injured, but he felt pain during the celebration. We saw it. So, yeah, it was kind of incredible. But with 𝐊𝐢𝐜𝐤, I'm not surprised by 𝐊𝐢𝐜𝐤 because I see him doing that kind of gestures from several months now. But yeah, he's. I think he will bring something to City when the opposing side are defending, because against City the opposing sides are practically always defending, and with his pass, with his vision and IQ, and the fact that he can play with the right and the left foot, it will be necessary to Guardiola against these low blocks teams, because he can create from nothing, and it's really good. And this
and also, of course, he's two-footed, which also helps. The fact that the defender doesn't know which way to show him.
Yeah. And this goal, I think it illustrates the way City will play next season. In my opinion, City will be a lot more vertical than horizontal next season. They will go deep in the back of the defense, because the players that we talked about, Ryan Ait-Nouri, he's the player to do that. We saw that in the previous games during the tournament. We talked about it, the way they go, their players go deep in the defense back. With Mateus Nunes also, he scored a goal like that. And Shaki is one of the players who can send the ball to these players. And with Haaland in the box area, it's a new option to Guardiola. The options to score will be multiples, vertical, and with Haaland on the box to give him the ball and just score like he always do.
And of course, Marcus Leonardo scored his second goal in the 113th minute after Ederson had actually saved a Milinkovic-Savic header pretty well, but he did push it straight into Leonardo. And they held on for the win. Just a couple of other stats to sort of highlight how the game went. Interestingly, you look at fouls. Manchester City made 17, but Al Hilal only 7. When you've seen other sort of more defensive performances in the tournament so far, you've seen teams sort of slow things down and do those little niggly fouls. And yeah, Al Hilal didn't do that. It was Manchester City with the majority. But also touches in the opposition box. When you dominant teams in this tournament seem to get between about 30 and 40 in the game. Al Hilal got 29. Manchester City had 72, which again sort of highlights just where most of the play was being played. Yes, enormous shock. Anything else you two want to say about the Man City Al Hilal game before we go on to another shock?
Yeah, it's just a note. It just shows, though, especially the touches in the opposition box, it shows how wasteful City were. I think they only had 3 of 14 shots, like 3 goals from 14 shots on target, whereas Al Hilal managed to convert 4 from only 6. So there's definitely work to do on the shooting range for Man City as well after this tournament. I don't know how long they're getting off. I think the players are still waiting to see how long they get off on a holiday before they're back for pre-season. But I think Pep, even in his interview after, said they were extremely wasteful in this match. It's happened last season on the cusp of them going into that dramatic dip. They definitely were getting a lot of shots on target, but failing to convert. And I think that was part of why it snowballed so badly for them for about 3 months, maybe. But that's obviously something they can work on. But one shock down, we can go on to shock number 2.
Yes, we'll talk about being wasteful. One of the most wasteful teams in the tournament has been Inter. Internazionale 0, Fluminense 2. Now, we mentioned before about how at the start of the second half in the other game, how Manchester City was sort of caught cold, how this team, how Hilal came out of the blocks and really shocked them. Fluminense had the exact same thing. They started the game at such an intensity and it completely caught Inter cold, and they scored in the 3rd minute. Leo, you'll back me up on this, but in the start of the tournament, I wrote a preview for both Inter Fluminense. And for Fluminense, I highlighted obviously Jean Arias, who's been wonderful this tournament, but also Gerard Cano, who was injured before the tournament, this 37-year-old Argentine. but he is potent. I think in the league he's got like a goal every 102 minutes, something like that. But wonderful instincts right at the start of the game. Sort of, it was a clumsy sort of build up because obviously there was a half a clearance, and then that was like deflected away,
strange.
and then a deflected cross into the box, and yet it was 𝐊𝐤𝐜 who was awake, who was prepared to gamble on the ball coming to him, and it was a clever finish, wasn't it, Léo?
Yeah, because it was as clever as 𝐊𝐤𝐜 was sleeping on that action, because I think it's his fault, because even if there are deflected balls and everything, I think 𝐊𝐤𝐜 should have come and take the ball, because he could have. It was not away from him and everything. But yeah, German 𝐊𝐤𝐜, he scored, and I think he scored in every clubs he's been through during his career, and he's a wonderful old-fashioned striker.
Yeah, very much a poacher. He sort of stays in between the posts.
Yeah, but from a personal point of view about this match, the thing that has struck me the most is the physical imbalanced it was one of the most physically unbalanced game of the tournament, and it is the first time that I can see that the way some Inter's players finished the game, it just showed how tired they are. They were completely burned out. But
and we should also point out that Inter, I think, played basically every single match available to them in the calendar. Obviously, because they got to the final of the Coppa Italia, they got to the final of the Champions League. I think it was only the semi-final of the Coppa Italia. So like missed one game, but they're still across the entire season. It was so long, and they were going for a treble. But actually, at the end of the season, one of the theories was they ran out of steam, because in the last 5 matches, they sort of went from potentially winning a treble to winning nothing, and it just seemed like they ran out of gas.
Yeah, psychologically and physically, it should be quite difficult. But just to talk about Fluminense, because they won, it was a terrific performance from them. They took advantage of the opportunities they were given. You mentioned John Arias. He once again was in the limelight. The duo formed by Thiago Silva and Inácio in the defense worked very well once again. Inter breaking down Fluminense's good defense. And what is funny is that Fluminense, a Brazilian team, they played like an Argentinian team with a lot of force.
Without the Reds.
Yeah, with a kind of vice, with aggression, and a great deal of courage. And Inter had chances. We can think about the 2 posts they hit.
Well, we'll come on to that in just a second.
Yeah, okay.
So if I can jump in here, but so looking at the first half alone, it's hard to argue Fluminense were the best team in the entire first half. Inter sort of weren't only just caught cold, but they were completely out of it. On the 30th minute, John Arias had another shot from 20 yards, which was parried into the path of 𝐊𝐤𝐜𝐤, who missed from 10 yards. So that could have been a second goal for Fluminense. They actually did score again in the 39th minute, but it was ruled out for offside, which, and rightly so. But still, that's half time, and they could have been 3-0 up, which is astonishing when you think about it. But credit where credit's due, Inter did sort of switch on a bit late, but they switched on for the second half. Patrick, what do you think was the thing that was missing from Inter in that first? What do you think was the difference between the first and second half? Is it just intensity?
I think confidence as well. I think when a team has, I can't think of a better word than an absolute stinker to the end of a season that Inter had. I think their confidence took a hell of a knocking from that. It would psychologically be a very tough hurdle to overcome. They probably hope to get into the Club World Cup and reset. Their group, probably they were in a favourable group, so not massive amounts of challenge in that. But yeah, the intensity, I think they got caught so cold by how Fluminense came out of the blocks. The first 10 minutes, anytime Fluminense attacked, especially for the goal, I think it was after 30, 40 seconds, De Vrij played a really horrible back pass that almost resulted in a goal. 2 minutes later, it looked, all I could think of, it reminded me of, remember Terminator 2 when the T-1000 like got hit, the liquid metal, and it like freezes at the end. It was like that was the entire inter-defense. There was like De Vrij and Bastoni weren't even in the penalty area when the goal went in. So, I think they were so shocked by that. Probably echoes of what's happened to them at the end of last season. I don't know if it was intensity as much. Maybe they just give themselves a kick in the rear at halftime. Is that we need to do better. I mean, arguably they played better than they did in the first half, but they only really attacked with intensity in the final 15 minutes, maybe like 15, 20 minutes is when they really started piling on a bit of pressure, and Fluminense started sort of creaking a little bit there. They managed to hold on, but they were creaking. But
well,
like
yes,
Sorry,
I was going to say, so jumping in. So speaking about De Vrij, he had this huge opportunity in the 69th minute, a miss from 3 yards out. So hasta la vista, baby, to that, to continue the Terminator metaphor. But yes, it was the fact Inter finally created a good move across the back post with Lautaro Martinez finally waking up and finally taking control of the game, heading it down to De Vrij, who poked wide from 3 yards out. And that's the sort of thing you just have to take those chances. I was writing down, it took until the 82nd minute for Inter to create another huge opportunity. But in that time, Esposito had a shot from 8 yards, which was saved brilliantly from the goalkeeper. And then in the sort of the period of play afterwards, it came to Martinez, who shot left-footed from the edge of the area, and that came off the inside of the post. Again, so we're talking about minor things like missing from 3 yards, the woodwork not coming to help. I think DeMarco hit the crossbar, but well into stoppage time.
And we can also talk about DeMarco's free kick, just near to the post.
Which one?
DeMarco had a free kick in the second half, and it went just near to the post, to the left post.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Oh, yeah, he can strike a football beautifully, can't he? Like, you can see why he's such an attacking wing-back. But despite the late pressure from Inter, and it did look like they might squeeze it, they did leave themselves completely exposed in the 3rd minute of stoppage time. Fluminense managed to sort of clear the ball and win a throw-in down the right. But again, talk about Inter looking tired from a Fluminense throw-in, just one throw-in, a half header away from Bastoni, I think it was. And then the ball is played left, and there are 2 Fluminense players and no Inter defenders. They completely switched off, and that allowed Hercules to score from the edge of the area. And then cue the commentators doing every single Herculean effort pun. But yes, do you think, Leo, do you think 2-0 flattered Fluminense, or do you think it's exactly the scoreline that it deserved?
I think they deserve this 2-0 win. They were lucky, of course. At some point, you talked about the posts hit by Inter and everything, but I think Inter were too scholar, if I can say. They were lacking of verticality. Their position was like a Guardiola team when they are not efficient in the box. They didn't really trouble Fluminense until the second half, and not even during the entire second half. So yeah, it was quite merited for Fluminense. And you just talked about the second goal. And do you see the attitude of I don't remember who was the defender against Hercules. I think it was Bastoni or Darmian. He didn't even just put his foot on the trajectory of the ball, as he could, because he was not far away from it. But I think he was just burnt out.
Yeah. So it goes back to the point, Patrick, we were talking about, obviously, Inter players being tired and just sort of the burnout, both mentally and physically. So there are some huge players that haven't turned up this tournament at all. I mean, Lautaro Martinez, to be fair, I mean, he should have scored more goals than he has, but also he can't do everything himself. Marcus Thuram has been struggling with trying to recover from an injury, so he's not really been in the tournament. But you look at people like, say, Denzel Dumfries, who against Barcelona looks like one of the best wing backs in the world, and yet this tournament has looked so lethargic and incredibly average. Patrick, who do you think were the biggest disappointments for Inter in this match or in the tournament in general? Because it has been a running theme.
Dumfries. Mario Darmian. I looked at last season for the most part, and he's looked really solid. Compared to like even say his United days, he looked really solid. He looks quite inventive when he gets the ball. He let the ball. Like today, he let the ball bounce for the first goal. He let the ball bounce in the 6-yard box, which is a catastrophic thing for a defender to do. I know there was a series of mistakes going into that goal, but even at that, I was quite disappointed with Darmian. But I would say with you, Dumfries was quite Thuram. But again, it's quite hard to attack these players for having had such a because by any other team standards, that's a brilliant season. Like to make it so far into every competition. Obviously, to go into the Club World Cup on such a embarrassing defeat to PSG was going to be a bitter pill to swallow for them. But Thuram obviously is having his struggles, but I don't think any real Sommer maybe a few good saves through his series of matches. But I can't say any particular. I think the team were just disappointing, but Dumfries, Thuram, Darmian.
I suppose one way to describe it would be like they look their age, because Inter have one of the oldest average ages, and obviously players like McKiernan. 𝐊𝐢𝐜𝐤 might be a bit unfair because he's only 31, I think. But there are several players into their 30s, and expecting them to play 50 matches odd a season is too much.
Yeah,
exactly, with that intensity.
And I was gonna say that that game maybe marked the end of a cycle at Inter. You just have to hear what Lautaro Martinez said post game about that if some players don't want to be at Inter, they should leave. And Marotta, the CEO of Inter, said. The president of Inter said that it was against Mkhitaryan. This sentence was for Mkhitaryan. So I think there is kind of they need to revigorate their team.
Well, talking about ages, let's have a word on the Fluminense goalkeeper Fabio at 44 years of age. He has just recorded the most clean sheets ever by any goalkeeper in the history of football. He has recorded 508. So a little quiz question that we're now doing part of these videos, apparently. Who did he just overtake? So someone held the record before Fabio. Who had the record number of clean sheets before Fabio? I'll give you a clue. It's someone who's been playing relatively recently. Like they only retired a year ago, 2 years ago.
Gianluigi Buffon?
Yes, Buffon. He had 506 was his record. But Fabio's just beaten it. But also Fabio is a short way away from recording the most appearances by any footballer in the history of football. This might be an unfair question. Like, who do you think holds the record? There's only one player has more appearances than Fabio.
How much? How much do we have? Does he have?
Is it another keeper?
So Fabio has 1,378 appearances, and the current record holder has 1,387 or 1,390. That's debatable. So Leo, this is going to be a very hard question for you. So Patrick, who do you think holds that record?
I feel like
I hear you. I'll give you a clue. He used to play for England.
Peter Shilton.
Yeah, so Peter Shilton holds the most. So Fabio is only 13 appearances away from becoming the most capped player ever, which is an astonishing achievement.
Yeah.
And he has just signed a contract extension, I believe, for another year. So
he'll beat the record then.
Yeah, look, fingers crossed he stays injury free because that's a hell of a thing to keep going towards. One other word before we go away from this game: the scenes after the match. You think back to there've been a couple of ugly scenes at the end of certain matches. You think back to say like River and Inter, but the end of this match was kind of beautiful, wasn't it? The Fluminense players and staff standing in a big circle in the centre around a flag, praying, but then dancing. I mean, that's the sort of thing this competition should be about, right? These wonderful cultural moments in football.
Yeah, I think the images we have seen between Inter and River Plate, it was not the spirit of this competition, and I prefer to see people like Mamelodi Sundowns. Also, we talked about them.
Yeah.
They were eliminated, but were dancing, celebrating with the fans, and I think it's good. It's good for football and for its perception through the eyes of the ones who say, yeah, it's just people, billionaires running after a ball. No, it means a lot more, and it's important to recall it and to see the beautiful stories that can happen in football.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
I was just going to touch on and just say for Fluminense, out of the two shocks, it's much easier to get behind Fluminense's win than Al Hilal's for like obvious reasons. Al Hilal played a fantastic team, but like they have resources that Fluminense don't have. So it's fantastic to see them make it through the quarterfinals, and here's hoping for more shocks along the way.
We were only talking yesterday about one of my worries at the start of the tournament was that at the quarterfinals we were going to have 7 European teams and Palmeiras. That was like the way that the draw happened. And before obviously yesterday's play, I made the same point to Leo, saying like, if this happens, how do we feel about it? But hence why before we started recording, I was saying how thrilled I was that it hasn't happened, because it just keeps the competition completely interesting, although slightly unbalanced again with top side of the draw, bottom side of the draw. But it just keeps it interesting. But on that point, though, there's something I did want to bring up, which was this felt like a big day for not only Club World Cup or FIFA, but also for Saudi Arabian football, because these two results feel like there's the theme of legitimizing things, right? So the fact these two results feels like it legitimizes FIFA expanding the Club World Cup to this extent. The fact that you have these different clubs from different nations getting through to the quarterfinals, it feels like it's legitimized FIFA's expansion, which I'm not sure how I feel about that, to be honest. Like, the more clubs from around the world, absolutely, but also there's a worry that they're going to expand it to 48 teams in 4 years' time, regardless. But also, it feels like this day is kind of legitimizing the project within Saudi Arabian football of bringing in all these overseas talents for ridiculous sums of money, because now Al Hilal have appeared on the world stage. They're no longer the big fish in Saudi Arabian football, or even sort of they're not even the dominant in the Asian Champions League as such, and yet they've just beaten one of the biggest teams in the world. So it feels like these two results have legitimized both FIFA and Saudi Arabian football, going what Patrick was mentioning about Al Hilal. Patrick, do you have any thoughts on that? Do you agree?
No, I agree with the fact that it's like sort of a mixed emotion, because if you look at Al Hilal just as a team, they play really well. They've obviously got the resources to buy pretty top quality players. They've got Mitrovic coming back from injury as well, so they're not lacking in quality. And if you take it out from a football perspective, from the game only, they are an enjoyable team to watch. And last night's match proves that they can go head to head with biggest teams on the world stage. And then on the other side, there is the Saudi project. Obviously, the Club World Cup's completely overshadowing the Gold Cup that's happening at the minute, which I didn't realize that Saudi Arabia were in it. So they lost to the quarterfinals to Mexico. It was just like, I was reading up on that and I was like, okay,
they're one of the invited teams.
Yeah, the invited teams that I think that was cancelled from the mid-90s up until Qatar got invited a few years ago before the World Cup, and now Saudi have been invited. But yeah, like these things are going to happen in football. Saudi Arabia probably sort of looked at the Chinese Super League a little bit and are replicating what China tried to do, but doing it more savvy. They've probably got more money behind them to do it. And yeah, there is a certain unsavory aspect to it that we could probably chat about down the line in another episode, maybe when it all finishes up, see where Al Hilal finish and what that means. But yeah, I'm mixed about it. Like the team are enjoyable to watch, but much like a lot of people thought about PSG, there is the whole state-owned element behind it that
I should highlight that, obviously, not to be hypocritical, but obviously in the Premier League is essentially a super league by the financial disparity between them and the other leagues. But obviously that's television as opposed to a state-owned, state-backed club. Right, let's look at the games happening today then, and we'll have the completion of the quarter-final lineup. First of all, we'll look at Borussia Dortmund versus Monterrey. Now, this is the last of the non-Europeans to potentially get through. Monterrey did brilliantly in their final group stage match to actually get through. A really surprising attacking performance, if memory serves me well. And Dortmund have shown themselves to not the complete package still. Sort of like they have shown vulnerabilities in defence and not quite clinical going forward. Leo, is this, and I realise the stupidity of asking this question considering yesterday, is this a possibility of an upset, Borussia Dortmund and Monterrey? And if so, how do you think it would happen?
I will maybe surprise you, but to me, I wouldn't be surprised to see Monterrey win tonight, given everything we've seen so far. And the fact is that Dortmund hadn't impressed us since the beginning of the tournament. They were good, they did the job, but they didn't show anything that can make me think about they will crush Monterrey. We know that the Mexican team is well organized. They concede.
They've only conceded one goal.
They are the best defense in the tournament with PSG, I think, with one goal. They don't concede much. They are really strong. They have experience. They have good players. I wouldn't be surprised here. And I can even say that I think Monterrey will eliminate Dortmund. Patrick,
your thoughts?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I'm with Leo here. I'm really hoping like Monterrey have impressed me. I'd love to see Sergio Ramos like score the winning goal, like a bullet header, like just old school. But yeah, Dortmund have not been impressive. Jude Bellingham has been impressive for me. He's very good at box to box. But I think that Dortmund have been underwhelming. Monterrey have players that can sort of transition well into attack. Jermaine Bertarami, if I'm saying that right. Yeah. Apology if I'm not. He's fantastic to watch. And just the fact that Dortmund they're one of those teams that have just got through without like any real fanfare. I haven't been that impressed by them. I don't think I've taken time to like watch any more than the highlights of their games. But yeah, they have the capability, obviously, if they switch it on to win. But I think they could get frustrated by Monterrey, and Monterrey could be more clinical on the day. So I'm hoping for a 1-0 win with a Ramos bullet.
Yeah, well, we were talking about the sort of narrative, right? So assuming Real Madrid beat Juventus, then either they'll face a team with Sergio Ramos and even Canales, another former player, or they'll be facing, or it'll be the Bellingham brothers going against each other. So like that, either way, it'll be a fun one if Real go through. I mean, it's interesting. So, I mean, context is important here. So, Monterrey scored 4 goals against one of the weakest teams in the tournament, in 𝐊𝐢𝐜𝐤, and Monterrey did it scored 3 goals in a 10-minute frenzy. So, potential to do that, but I would imagine Dortmund are better equipped to deal with that kind of counter-attack. Having said that, they've really struggled to finish their chances, and they've not really been creating that many clear-cut chances. It's not like Inter, where they really should have scored more goals. Dortmund have they're slightly below their expected goals, but not by much. Going against a team like Monterrey, who are clearly an incredibly well-disciplined defensive side, it could be interesting. And you do wonder where those moments of quality or moments of, say, a mistake could decide the whole thing. What might be interesting is, as we saw today with Al Hilal in the second half and Fluminense in the first half, sort of coming out of the blocks full pelt, if Monterrey do the same and sort of catch Dortmund cold. But the other game, the big one, so to speak, Real Madrid versus Juventus. Juventus are the third highest scoring team in the tournament so far, although they did concede 5 against Manchester City. Patrick, do you think Juventus have the weapons to hurt Real Madrid?
Yes, I definitely think they do. I think that I'll probably just go out on a limb and look like a fool again, because I think I predicted Real Madrid to lose twice already in this tournament. But I think Real Madrid obviously have fantastic players, but I think Juventus with Yildiz, Thuram, Moani, they've got like so much skill that they can completely like obliterate a team. I think this is going to be a real basketball match. I really do. I'm super excited for this one. I'm super excited that it's on at a palatable time for everybody in this call. I think it'll be attack versus attack in this game. I think it's going to be a great spectacle. But I do think the Juventus have the ability, have the, I wouldn't say structure, because I don't think structure is going to be as important in this match. I think they just will be going at each other just to show who is, like, obviously who can score the most goals. So I'm thinking maybe 4-3 to Juventus in this one, because I always tip Real Madrid to have an off day. Like they can have it where all their top players aren't on form. Maybe this time it'll happen. They might score a few, but I'd say 4-3. And I would think Juventus can get it over the line in this one.
Liam?
I agree with Patrick on the idea of a basketball match with a lot of goals, attacking threats and everything, but I think Real Madrid will succeed. Juventus have shown that they were defensively limited, especially against Manchester City, against whom the 4 or 5 of the 5 goals were led by defensive errors. It will be quite interesting to see, because I think Kylian Mbappe will be here tonight for the first time in the tournament, so it will be quite interesting to watch and to analyze how Xabi Alonso wants him to play with Vinicius, with Rodrigo, and to see if Garcia will be on the bench or in the starting lineup. I think he will be on the bench, and to see the animation between the 3, and I can even say the 4 with Bellingham, because we saw last season it was quite complicated for them to play Bellingham, Vinicius and Mbappe were often in the same area on the pitch, so it will be interesting to see how Xabi Alonso will organize that with also Trent Alexander-Arnold very high on the field. So it's one of my point of interest on tonight's game, and I think Real Madrid will win this one.
I was going to say I'm going to disagree slightly with Patrick. One thing, looking back at the other games, obviously the game against Pachuca's, you have to take into consideration they had a red card after 7 minutes, but they did still have 57% possession with 10 men, which is quite astonishing. But something to keep in mind against Salzburg was they switched to a back 3, and they had the majority of possession there as well. But they were quite content having the ball sort of not in non-threatening areas before finding those sort of precise passes through midfield into the feet of usually Vinicius Junior. And one thing Juventus against Manchester City, I said Juventus would hurt Manchester City, which was correct. I didn't, but Juventus also were terrible defensively.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling that the way that Real Madrid attack, if you have the movement and speed of Vinicius Junior, and as well not having Juventus not having those midfielders that will follow the midfield runs of Bellingham, of Valverde, of 𝐊𝐢𝐜𝐤, who seem to be rotating who goes forward, I think Real Madrid, who seem also, they're quite comfortable the other team having the ball, historically, although that's under Ancelotti rather than Alonso. But they are capable of sort of, biding their time and having that, choosing the moments when to attack. So yeah, I think my worry if I was Juventus would be the lack of defensive midfield cover, picking up the pockets of space for, like I say, for 𝐊𝐤𝐜𝐤, for Bellingham, because if they don't do that, then they're going to get hurt badly. And considering Juventus, one of the big things was they kept conceding space down the flanks. Manchester City were attacking left and right so easily. So if Vinicius Junior peels off to the left, I mean, he is the best winger in the world. If he gets space, then he's going to punish you time and again. And I just can't see what I saw in the last game against Manchester City. I can't see Juventus being a solid defensive unit. I just can't. So yeah, my prediction would be Real Madrid for that. Although not very controversial prediction, but that's my working. Right. Anything to add before we end this one?
No, it will be. We can just say that it will be another good day for football, because this Juve Madrid is quite interesting to watch and to preview.
Well, in that case, thank you so much, Leo, for joining me. Thank you, Patrick. You've both been gems, as ever. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure you go on our social medias. Make sure you subscribe, follow, engrave it into your brains, however you would like to do it. Make sure you do it. And we'll see you tomorrow once the lineup for the quarterfinals are complete. Thank you so much, guys.
Have a nice day, Daniel. Have a nice day, Patrick.
Take care. Bye.